Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I've made it out to Danbury Common to have a little bit of a different play around in the woods here. Now that sounds a little bit dodgy, but there is a reason why I'm saying that. I've come out today with a little bit of a plan of some types of images that I wanted to capture. Now I must admit, maybe you didn't believe what I'm about to say, but I don't actually come out with a plan at all when I'm coming out to do my photography. But today I've got a little bit of a plan. Whether or not that will work out, I really don't know. But hopefully some of the types of images that I'm going to capture today are going to be a little bit different. But using this time of year where the woodlands without any leaf cover in the trees will hopefully be the reason why I've ventured out here. So let's see what images I can get today. Making it over for the first composition, as you've probably seen from a little bit of the B-roll, is the plan for today is to look up. Now you've probably heard of the film Don't Look Up, but today is the opposite, do look up. There's a lot to be said by looking up at the tree line this time of year. There's so many interesting shapes and patterns of the branches without any leaf cover on it at all, and being sort of really silhouetted against the light sky obviously behind it as well. And today is quite an ideal day to actually take this type of photography because it's very much a silhouette of the obviously branches and the shapes and patterns that they obviously create, but you want a sort of diffused background behind it, and ideally an overcast day is really good for this type of photography. And yeah, luckily enough they tend to be quite frequent, don't they, the overcast days. And getting out into the woodland this time of year to capture these type of images is something that I wanted to do for a couple of weeks now, sort of thinking about something a little bit more creative, a little bit more different, trying to mix up my own photography to then create different styles of images. Now I could have easily have come here today and taken sort of the classic woodland type of images and sort of hunted around for those types of compositions, and I wouldn't have come away disappointed at all. But I really, as I say, had this little bit of a plan to come out and try and take these styles of images. And yeah, as I say, I don't tend to really come out on a shoot with any style of plan in mind at all, but today is a little bit different. And hopefully with this type of images and these sort of little bit different, a little bit overlooked or underlooked because you're kind of looking down at eye level all the time and never really looking up, it may well open up sort of some other options for yourselves to get out and shoot in the woodland this time of year. Setting up the camera, I've swapped over from the 24 to 105 lens to the 17 to 40 lens, just because having that extra wider angle means that I can sort of compose the image that little bit better. And luckily enough, having obviously the flip out screen and being able to angle that works out really quite well for this type of photography. And what I'm able to try and do is compose the image with some of the branches down in the bottom left hand corner of the image and sort of leading up through the image is hopefully working out to be quite a pleasing composition. Now, shooting at that wide angle, the one compromise that I'm having to do is there's a lot of obviously other overarching trees as well, and they're kind of distracting slightly within the actual composition. Now, options that I've got for that: either I can tighten the crop, so obviously zoom in slightly if I wish to, or even do that in post as well afterwards. Or the other option as well is to have a little bit of manipulation in post-production and clone out some of the unwanted branches as well. So you're just sort of left with the branches that you really want and the skeleton of the actual tree that I'm shooting, of this lovely old oak tree. So yeah, and there's a couple of other trees around this area that will hopefully produce another couple of compositions as well. Settings, as I say, for the camera is f11, ISO 50 and about 1/30th of a second as the image, and hopefully, yes, as I say, in post-production maybe a little bit of manipulation, but for the image itself working out really well. When you open yourself up to this type of photography, it's surprising how many compositions really come about simply by just looking up. Another composition here as a classic, just walking along this path, meandering through the woodlands as you do anyway on any woodland shoot, but looking up at this time of year with, as I said, obviously no leaf cover on the trees at all. There's so many types of shapes and really interesting textures within the actual trees and patterns as well. So again, obviously setting the camera up here, looking obviously at this composition, and what I've got for this composition is two trees either side of the image, creating a bit of a bookend, a natural frame of the actual composition, with the tree branches in the middle sort of bearing from the right to the left of the actual composition and creating a bit of a diagonal as well. So yeah, this one will work out really quite well, I think, again, as obviously just exposing the image correctly, and that's the key thing really. So when you review the image on the back of the camera, obviously I've got the blinkers set, so if it has blown out any highlights, obviously I know that I need to obviously readjust the exposure, so which is obviously what I do. And as I said earlier, obviously making all of these images a silhouette, so exposing obviously for the brightness behind it, will hopefully work out to be quite an interesting composition. For the next image, I've gone a bit off of track and working my way through the area here of these lovely silver birch. Now, it wouldn't be right if I came to a woodland and not take an image of a silver birch tree, would it? I think I would get told off by Mr. Overland if I didn't get an image of a silver birch in the woodland. So yes, I've ticked that box, so I won't get told off by him, joking aside. But this one, I'm working out really quite well actually. I'm really quite loving the fact that I'm so close to the actual trunk of the tree and using that to obviously lead you straight through the actual composition. Now, even though keeping it at f11 and focusing about in the middle of the frame, the foreground, so the closest part of the actual trunk, is going to be a little bit soft, but I'm happy with that given the type of compositions and images that I'm capturing today. But yeah, leading your line, obviously, leading the eye straight up through the obviously trunk of the tree, right up to the top, and obviously with all of the branches right at the very top of the tree there, working out really quite interesting. So again, keeping the camera pretty much the same settings, f11, ISO 50, adjusting the shutter speed accordingly. This time I think it's about 1/50th of a second. Yeah, just obviously balancing that light meter and histogram and making sure that you're not blowing out the highlights really. One extra thing that I'm liking about today's shoot compared to my normal type of photography is I don't have to worry and faff around about getting the camera level, because obviously that's not needed in any of these compositions today. There's no horizon line, so I'm not having to obviously get the leveler up on the camera and obviously making sure that that's completely level before I take the image. But yeah, that's one bonus about taking this type of images, that you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, as I say, opening up different types of compositions. working on the last composition here of, again, another oak tree in this location. There's loads of them, and as I say, working out to be a really interesting subject matter for today's planned shoot. For this one, what I've done is obviously had a good look around this tree. I spotted it earlier and I wanted to come back to it, and luckily enough I obviously have, and remembered where it was as well, which is obviously can get a little bit confusing, particularly when you start going off the main tracks and getting your bearings to where exactly you need to go back to. But having a look around and trying to obviously work out for a type of composition, I've settled on this one here. Again, camera settings pretty much the same, f11, ISO 50, 1/60th of a second for this particular image, 17mm on the lens, and between 70 and 40mm was obviously the set focal lengths that I'm using today. But one thing that's quite key for this one is making sure once you've got the camera set up on the tripod that you pivot the camera once it's on the tripod as well, and just finalising that sort of overall composition, because slight adjustments left or right of the pivot point on the actual tripod can really alter for the plus and for the minus of the overall composition. So what I mean by that is, on this particular composition, as you've possibly seen by some of the B-roll already, if I pivot the camera, there was a large area of sky that was obviously being shown, and I didn't necessarily want that because it was on the side of the actual image. So by just pivoting the camera slightly and rotating it that little bit, I was able to obviously recompose the image for a bit more of a pleasing overall composition in the end. So it's just thinking about that once you've actually got the camera onto the tripod, and obviously just fine-tuning it, particularly if you're doing this type of photography. Have a good look at the back of the screen of the camera and make sure that obviously all of the elements are there before you then take that final image, because you don't really want to get back to the obviously computer and then having to think about that composition and think, oh, if I would have just slightly changed it, that would have been that little bit better. Finding a bench at the end of your shoot to have a sit down and a coffee is a real good bonus, isn't it? And I've really enjoyed it today, coming out here to Danbury Common and taking the type of images that I've caught today. And it's yeah, as I say, it's something that I plan to do for a couple of weeks now, and looking at the types of conditions that we had, as I say, ideal conditions for this type of photography today, with the overcast skies and obviously no leaf coverage on the trees at all. And hopefully for maybe the next month or so, as we are at the beginning of February, there's going to be at least the opportunity to capture these types of images if you obviously choose to do this type of photography. It just opens up more opportunities, isn't it, really? And that's one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that I did for my YouTube channel and for my type of photography, is think a little bit more creative and a little bit more, well, what can we do rather than what can't we do? And that's always the thing, isn't it, really? Oh, I can't do this because of X, Y and Z, but let's try and think, I can do this because the conditions are working out well and because there's no leaf coverage on the trees themselves. So I was able to obviously do this type of shoot today, and yeah, something a little bit different, a little bit abstract maybe, and actually some of the compositions, but I've enjoyed it. And to be fair, isn't that the main thing about photography? As long as you enjoy whatever you're taking as an image, if other people enjoy it, absolute bonus, but as long as you enjoy it, that's the main thing. Thanks everyone for watching. Really do appreciate you watching my content and all the support that I've able to get as well from that, the comments, the likes, etc. I thank you ever so much for everyone. And until next time when I'm back out and about, take care. Cheers.